Good morning. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. This is Bryan Betts, your host. So excited to be here with Pastor Andy Littleton and Pastor Eric Deepen. I bet you weren't expecting that intro at all because I was so quiet, and then bam, what? I'm just excited to be here.
To our listeners in Japan, sorry that you have to decrease the volume by 50% this week because Bryan is excited. He's really excited about Faith Over Breakfast.
Well, how are you guys doing? How was your weekend?
It was good. Hey,
what's your favorite color? What are you up to?
Wow, this is off to a roaring start. I should slow down a bit here and say this is Faith Over Breakfast, Tucson, Arizona.
Yep.
We are here at XO Coffee. I've got a Whiskey Town biscuit. Bryan has a slightly different kimchi breakfast sandwich than he had last time.
And I have a maple scone and cold brew iced coffee.
Yep. Thanks, XO. It's delicious. We appreciate you. Eric is the pastor of a church in Tucson, Arizona called The Village. Bryan is the head of the Department of Internal Services. And I, Andy Littleton, am the pastor of, or one of the pastors of Mission Church in Tucson, Arizona. So we're here. We get breakfast on Tuesdays. We've been doing this for a while. You're invited to the conversation.
Yeah. I just wanted to say you're
a great host, Andy. You're a great host.
The Village.
Yeah.
Was rated as the fastest growing church in Japan.
Oh, yeah?
It's small and has no members there.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You heard it here first.
Yep.
The Village
magazine just ranked us in their fastest growing small churches with no members in Japan.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yep.
Should I be reading Outreach Magazine? Are they one of our sponsors?
Not yet. We're trying.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right, we'll work on that. Do we have a website?
We don't, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we're going to have a website someday. We also have an email, faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com.
So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and send it to us on there. I'm trying to figure out the layout. That's what's kind of the next step for me is kind of really us, is talking to you guys about the layout and what you want it to look like and stuff.
Oh, yeah?
So,
the website?
Yeah, so I'll be sure to have some pictures for you.
Good deal.
And then that'll be up sooner than later. It'll be really nice.
Yeah.
Well, so we're here. We've all had some crazy weeks. Eric was out last week, really busy. What was going on with you, Eric?
Well, we've had this strange problem with my wife's car where if you drive it for too long, it begins to slow down and die out. And you thought, maybe it's the alternator.
Oh, boy.
Well, we charged the battery, take the leads off. I took the chargers off, took the negative wire off. Doesn't stall out. Alternator seems like it's working okay. Calling the mechanic, he's like, yeah, it's not the battery, it's not the alternator, it's probably a charging problem. So it's actually at the mechanic today because we haven't had time to get it there until today. So yeah, we stalled out in that rain on Saturday at Benny's on I-10.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Man, that reminds me of one of our other sponsors, which is Volvo of Sweden. Eric does not probably drive Volvos of America, the newer Volvos, but Volvos of Sweden.
Yeah, I drive Volvos of Sweden.
And very dedicated to Volvos, it seems. You've got a great Volvo mechanic.
Mm-hmm. Roy. Maybe he wants to support us.
Shout outs to Roy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Swedish connection.
Swedish connection, yeah.
We're looking for sponsors.
We are looking for sponsors.
And so, anyway, so shoot. That's car trouble. It's the worst.
Yeah, and maybe we should say that we're up to 31 listeners.
31 listeners.
Yeah.
How many are in Japan?
Oh, we're going to check that out right now and get some stats here, the locations.
It's really important.
Okay, over the last 5 days, 45% of our listening has happened in Tucson, Arizona, and we've had 65 listens.
Okay.
By Tokyo has given us 45 listens.
Stop.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I see this on the screen. That is
31% from Tokyo.
Very interesting. Well, people
Phoenix,
in Tokyo, we thank you.
And Tempe. Yeah.
All the way down to San Fran and New York City.
Yeah.
New York City.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. And then, so United States, Japan, Germany, and the Netherlands.
Netherlands.
friends.
These are our listeners.
Norway,
Shout out to my
Sweden,
Netherlands,
and
man.
Denmark.
That's right.
Volvo of Sweden.
That's right.
Maybe we do have a chance.
We do have a chance, people. This is good.
Oh man, I just want to give a tip to podcasters who eat breakfast during their podcast, which I know is a slim percentage, but don't get your egg over easy. It's just all over my stinking fingers, and this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think you
Media's
have to
my
go scrambled or
Over hard.
or something like
Over
that.
hard would have been a good. I like over hard anyway. So anyway, it's probably my beard, which is perfect because you're doing Mevo camera of us.
That's
today.
right, because our host, who, the two pastors are always getting in his way.
we are. We take over. I took over for you, Bryan.
Yeah.
You guys, it's your podcast. I am just the host. I just like direct conversation.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, you might not need me anymore. So,
Okay.
I'm trying. That's okay.
Yeah, at any rate. What were you about to say about you? We were about to say something about Bryan.
Oh, I don't know. Bryan, what were we going to say about you?
nothing.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. People in Japan can see Bryan. Because
Oh,
he
yes.
has said viewers, and we know that he wanted to be seen by them.
And
Yeah.
the viewer, when I said viewership and viewers, I was referring to our Facebook page.
Yeah,
So,
but
faith
now we're
over
really going
breakfast.
we need that. We can't have you be a liar here at Facebook Breakfast.
Yeah.
So we work to keep the truth up front.
There's a lot of people that are going to be very disappointed in Japan, and I'm sorry about that.
Or not. Or we're going to start getting
They're
a
gonna be
flood
like-
of emails.
Who's that weird guy who doesn't have a beard?
Or who's that good-looking man?
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah, the other two.
now we might be able to get you a spouse while we're at this.
Hey, who knows?
Yeah. All right.
Okay, well, all that said, that's
Yeah.
quite a plan we have.
There you go.
Yeah.
Next, new goals.
That's new goals.
But I will say, 31 listeners, and I mean, in the last 5 days, 65 podcasts have been listened to.
Wow.
In Tucson.
Wow.
So we're
Considering that's, in our case, I mean, look, some people have a big following. Some people have a band. Some people have a mega church. For us, this is like the equivalent of our whole church is listening.
yeah.
I mean, almost. Yeah, if you were to count families and stuff. So, hey, in our world, this is great. Thanks, listeners. We appreciate you.
Yeah. And if you, want to get on the show, I mean, you should listen, and we might give you an opportunity to get on the show.
We might give you an opportunity. Yeah, we're going to start. We want to have our friends to breakfast. So, folks in Japan, tickets are cheap.
Yeah, they're cheap.
Yeah, come on out.
faithoverbreakfast@gmail.com. Just email us. We respond pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah. And so, yeah. Anyway, we're here to talk. We've had stuff going on. We're pastors. Things are happening. I just late last night watched Dunkirk in 70 millimeter at our local small theater.
Did you watch that with your wife?
No. She was working. We went
Okay.
with it was guys' night out.
Oh, okay.
5 of us. 5 men watching a war movie.
War movie, how many women were in that movie?
In the movie?
Yeah, in the movie.
Ooh, not a lot.
Not a lot.
I remember at one point I was struck because there was it's a really moving scene where all the I can't tell you, can I? I can't tell you about this movie. There's a moving scene, and in the scene I was struck by, there's a woman in the scene.
Oh, wow.
Really, and I think they did that on purpose, but just to show that women are involved in this. But yeah, there were not a lot of women in this movie. As I'm sure there were also not a lot of women in the historical event.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, yeah, I watched Dunkirk and made me think of military, made me think of war. We have interesting perspectives here at the table on this. Bryan has just recently admitted that he is actually involved in the military.
Yeah, but that podcast won't air, so.
Yeah,
But I am in the military.
Look back at our last podcast, folks.
It will eventually
Yeah,
air.
it'll air.
In about 12 years from now.
It's
after my
caught up in some legal stuff, but
Yeah.
we think we're pretty clear. We just have to check with our lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to look into it. Mm-hmm. And
We're gonna look into it. He's the head of the legal department.
Yeah,
I know.
He is.
the lawyers say no, we can't do it. I don't know. I was actually thinking about it, but they said no, so My hands are tied. I don't know about you guys.
Sounds like a lot of more government mumbo jumbo to me.
I know. The government does not know how to do things effectively.
So you are in the military?
I am in the military, yes. I'm an aircraft mechanic.
Yes.
There it is. And and that's why he's so clean shaven, and we're not.
No.
Well, I've been on leave today and yesterday and this weekend, so hypothetically I should have some hair. But the reason why I don't have a beard is because, one, I can't grow one as best as I could. Mm-hmm. I have like 7 armpit hairs total. I have like nothing.
Let me see.
I'm like 26.
Show the viewers.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Like,
that's at least 200 right? I see right there.
Yeah, but barely. For a 26-year-old with no chest hair at all. Yeah, if I grow out my hair, like on my chin and face, it looks awful and patchy. That's not even self-deprecating. That's just honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to be honest about those. Other times we just don't.
Yeah. One of Eric's signature moves is being honest about his chest hair. I mean, if you're...
Yeah, sometimes, I forget that this button right here is... But Andy's helpful and reminds me to get fully dressed.
Yeah. You look great, though.
Before the podcast.
That's right.
Yeah. It goes with your very honest, open vibe.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people appreciate it.
This is who I am. See?
I mean... If I had the gold chain, I would have been more comfortable with that. I'm glad you caught me on that one, because I'm like, that was not on purpose to show off my chest hair to everybody.
Oh, man. So, anyway, I've watched Dunkirk. We have... and then Eric is, you would say, a pacifist.
Yes, I'm a form of pacifist.
A form of pacifist. Which form?
The more reformed form?
The Reformed Pacifist.
Yes, that'd be a great book.
Uh-huh.
Reformed Pacifist. Yeah, well, it's complicated.
Well, tell us
because I've come to that, over the years. Mm-hmm. I think I have no problem with people enlisting in the military, and so I'm not a person who would resist the draft if I were younger.
Okay.
Those kinds of things. But
you would not reject Bryan?
No, but I would like to be part of. I would have to be part of a support staff. I'd have to be in a place where I wasn't carrying a weapon. Mm-hmm. But more, I think my issues come in. We live in a democracy where I hand over my powers to people, and so I am not comfortable saying, elected, Representative Andy, I am not voting for you or anyone in your position if you have the power to take somebody else's life, because I don't want to give you that power, like my power, to say it's okay. So, I affirm that you're going to send people to war or...
So you are uncomfortable with that, or you are?
I'm not comfortable.
Okay.
So I think that the issue for me is I don't vote for presidents. I don't vote for state and representatives or senators because they all have power to take life. Certain judges, I don't vote. I won't vote for.
You heard it here first. Eric Deepen did not vote for Donald Trump.
I did not vote for Donald Trump
because he didn't vote for anybody.
I did. I wrote in my housemate as kind of a protest vote. But yeah.
That's interesting. So you would be a part of the military as a support, but you would not vote for somebody who could exercise violence.
Right.
So you would, in the criminal world, drive the car but not rob the store.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, it's complicated in that sense. I think there's a level of obeying authority, and if the authority drafts me, then I can say, I will follow up to this point.
Okay.
Because we're all complicit all the time in everything.
Right.
And so it's at what level of complicit are you willing to be? If you brush your teeth with Crest or use a cheap toothbrush, you are exploiting kids all over the world in third world countries. Right. So we're complicit in violence and complicit in oppression.
So you do have to I guess, own that. And you're right. You really can't. And I get the tension with all that. But then, own that, but you have to decide how complicit will I be.
Yes.
And for you, that placing people in authority is problematic, but if someone is in authority, you will submit to that up to a point.
Yes.
And the point is?
Me taking somebody else's life.
Okay.
So, but at the same time, when people hear I'm a pacifist, they ask that great question. Someone's breaking into your house, they're about to kill your wife, are you going to defend them, or are you just going to let them?
That is the question.
And my answer is really simple. I will defend them. I don't have a problem with violence. I have a problem with taking people's lives.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's not my place. And it's the position of the early church.
Yeah.
The early church would not allow you to be an executioner, couldn't be a senator in the Roman Senate, you couldn't be a centurion, but you could be part of the support staff. So any kind of violent place where you have the power to take somebody's life.
All right.
So that's kind of where I stand in that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, in some way, if you voted for President Bush or Obama, these are two of the most violent presidents of our time, and that they launched multiple, attacks against people with drones.
Right.
No,
it's like a very detached violence too, which is very. I don't know. This could be a sidetrack, but I'm not. This is not a pro-violence statement here, but I just think it is very different to go to war in a man-to-man, face-to-face, woman-to-woman, person-to-person situation where you have to look at the humanity of a person versus war in which you do not have to encounter the humanity of a person. And I would assume the second would be much, in a way, it would seem maybe easier to do and feel okay about, but we are getting there are an awful lot of people very psychologically damaged by the new warfare.
Yes.
And I think we're still trying to understand that.
Yeah.
But it's, something about it doesn't feel as violent when you hear about it. Oh, there's a drone strike.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's like my little remote control car. I drove it into a little village and shot some, like a video game.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No, it's not.
Not even close. Yeah.
No. And I also, I'm very different in my pacifism than that. That's why I say I'm, whatever. I don't know what kind of modifier you put on it. But I don't have a problem if you say, no, I think Scripture is very clear that I not only should be in the military, but when there's injustice, the country who can stop that injustice needs to intervene. And if violence is the intervention, then that's what we need to do. And if I need to take somebody's life to do that, I think that's okay. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with you having that position. That's just not, and I'm okay with you. I won't say you're wrong. I think it's not something that's clear. It's just a thing of conscience. I feel for me personally, not for my country. I'm not saying my country should be pacifist. I'm just saying I have the privilege at this point.
Eric Siepen at the Village Church in Tucson, Arizona, is a reformed personal pacifist.
Yes, that would be a good title. I'm a reformed personal pacifist.
And where do you stand?
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, because I'm still, right now, I'm trying to figure that out.
On the fly.
Yeah, no, I'll just say, I don't know. I go back and forth. I studied in a very pacifistic school in Chicago. That was interesting for me because I'd kind of grown up.
What school was that?
The Seminary Consortium for Urban Pastoral Education. Ding ding, sponsorship.
Yeah, that sounds like either like a special secret martial arts group of people or ninjas.
It might be. It was called Scoop for short. It's in downtown Chicago. It's
wow,
cool. A lot of seminaries feed students in often for a year of urban ministry training. I just took their program, just on the side. But yeah, I mean, so I had I was early 20s, and I didn't go to college. I went into car audio, right? So I was like a kid who listened to Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, so that's pretty pacifistic right there.
Right there.
Yeah, and then
some of the most pacifist rap I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like, I'm gonna kill you, you blankety blank.
The epitome of.
Yes. And so then I kind of grew up listening to that sort of stuff, and I lived in a trailer park, and I went to church, and and I punched one kid in high school because he was driving me nuts for about a month, and that felt pretty weird. And then, so there you go. And then I show up in this school where I've got professors who had disarmed nuclear weapons and various been arrested for that and various things. So then I was confronted with their point of view, which was very different, very intriguing, interesting to me, because I really wanted to see faith have an impact. I wanted to see things differently than I had seen them in the churches I grew up in. So it was all very interesting to me, but also it left me with a ton of questions. And I think I asked the very question you just asked of one of my professors, something to the effect of, so somebody breaks into your house, right? What you're just going to say, hey man, please leave,
Is there a possibility that you could not bother us at this time? We're sleeping, it's been a long day.
Right. I would really prefer if you would do to me as you would have me do to you. And what I would do to you is I would not have come in your house in the first place. So if you could please do that and just reasonably take the back door. Here is a Skittle bag from Halloween.
Yeah, and $10.
Yeah. Go and be at peace.
I was going to say like $3, get himself another candy bar if the Skittles isn't fun.
Right.
But $10, this is why you're a lot more generous than I am.
Right. So I asked that question, and of course the professor very kindly told me that was a question everybody asked, and it was really quite ignorant, which made me feel really ignorant. But it still didn't help me figure that out. And then that's I just wrestled with that, and then as part of a really conservative church where we had military generals as elders and stuff like that, and that didn't sit quite right with me either. And even this morning, a buddy of mine last night who went to Dunkirk with me just got out of the Coast Guard, and he suggested a podcast with Shane Claiborne, Chuck Colson, and Greg Boyd, and they were all discussing. It was on Bean, the podcast, and so I was actually listening to that this morning while I was kind of trying to unclog a drain before coming here to Faith Over Breakfast. So, I hear all these perspectives, and I see. I think Greg Boyd on that podcast was complaining about the kind of the nationalism that he's seen within the church, and the kind of the mixture of like jets flying over crosses and American flags in the sanctuary, and all that does not sit right with me at all, especially having experienced global Christianity several times in my life. That just doesn't compute for me or sit right. But at the same time, seeing like kind of the biblical injunction for authority and and bearing the sword and the place for that, but then feeling like that's so often not reined in well, and I think we blindly support such things. So anyway, all that to say, I don't feel like I have this position of pacifist or straight up like get behind your military. I feel like it's, I guess, and I'm sorry to not take a position, but I just think it's super case by case. Like, I would really want to like hear and understand a lot about a conflict before I were to give any form of endorsement to it, and I would probably endorse very few at the end of the day if I could know as much as I wish I could know. And I feel very just in the dark on most of what's going on. And I, as most other millennials or exennials, as new articles have deemed me, I'm not so sure I trust the people up top that they have the right motives. So I struggle with all that.
Yeah, no.
There you go.
That's what many of us are.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's that? I named your position. You named mine.
I think you named it as the ex-millennial. This is a new. I missed this article.
Oh,
and I'm
man.
usually up on this.
You're
You're
the generations guy.
Well, those people who are caught in those early '80s and they don't know what to call them.
I'm going to pull this up on the screen.
Yeah, I was reading an article just recently, and she was saying, "Oh, millennials started in 1982," and I'm like, "No, they started in 1984." And yeah, so there's lots of disagreement about that little cusp.
All right, there's the Guardian's talking about it. The Huffington Post is talking about this.
The Huff
folks.
Post trying to be trendy.
Huff Post. This is new stuff. This is June 2017. You heard it right here. Breaking news on
Breaking
Faith Over
news.
Breakfast.
Yeah.
Zennials.
Zennials.
Oh yeah, you don't pronounce the X. The
X.
micro generation between Gen X and millennials. We're all tired of hearing about millennials. I agree, but there's a new group. Sorry, Brian.
Hey, I'm tired of hearing about me too.
Okay. There's a new group we're about to be talking about a lot more, defined as the generation born between 1982, right here, and 2004. Millennials are aged between 13 to 35. I'm 34. The generation before Gen X spanned another 20 years, beginning in 61, ending in 81. With such a large cohort, it's hard to imagine everyone in these demographics identifies with the perceived persona of these generations. Enter Xennials, the new term being used to describe people being born between 1977 and 1983. So I'm on the very end of that. Are you in it?
I was born in 1972.
No.
No.
You're Gen X. Yeah.
I am Gen X, and I identify as an Xer.
Yeah.
When they describe Xers, I'm like, oh, I'm that plus, my friend.
Yeah. So then it says, like the pessimistic Eric Siepens, Gen Xers before them, this microgeneration is not as tech-savvy as the millennials who are considered digital natives.
Right.
And that is true, because I did not grow up with cell phones and computers. And,
right.
And I still, when somebody goes, hey, Andy, do you want to start a website for Faith Over Breakfast? I go, can somebody else do that?
I mean, I didn't really grow up with them either, to clarify. I didn't grow up with computers. Like my parents...
But you were raised by wolves, so that's different.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. And so
Sorry,
you...
I didn't interrupt. Your parents.
No, we didn't have a lot. So everyone else had like the Razor. That was a huge one and everything.
Oh,
it was like the last years of high school and early years of college that like smartphones became huge and that they became so. I feel like
huge.
Yeah, huge. Everybody had them.
Like the screens are 10 inches now.
Exactly, but I didn't have anything like that. I think my first phone was this little flip phone in my sophomore or junior year, and I rarely used it. I was great at T9, but like I was still a bad texter.
T9.
Yeah, T9.
Yeah.
That's how you text on flip phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've had this discussion with some other friends of mine who are like around the year that I was about how we didn't grow up with it, but we were so still integrated with it. Like it's still so much a part of like our lives, and so like there's like this weird nostalgia that like some people have never. Just a few years after me, they don't know life without this stuff.
Yeah,
and I still remember it.
Yeah.
So it's really weird. So because I've heard 1984 around there being millennials, and I've heard 1994 being millennials, and I think I've seen both. Like I can see how I've seen 1984 be millennials in terms of like how you would imagine a millennial to be, and I've seen people 1992. My younger brother, or my older brother especially, he's 1989. He's just not like he's a Generation X, where he's more micro, the micro generation. But.
Now, the burning question to me from all that was just said is: if you were raised by wolves, would you be a pacifist?
Right, I don't think so.
And is the environment, is the natural world pacifist?
Right.
I've grown up just seen a lot of killing because we needed to in order to survive as wolves, and it gets exhausting,
all that raw meat.
Gosh. And it tastes terrible.
Wow.
No time to cook it and season
only because
it.
you were raised by wolves, but to the wolves themselves it tasted delicious.
Right, but not to change the subject, but I think that the interesting. So you're kind of in the middle.
I would say like I just struggle. I don't feel like I've decided.
Right. Yeah.
You know, or
so you have
do
probably some like justice and pacifist,
Yes.
like a need to exercise justice,
Yeah.
and then a sense of maybe no, we got to restrain this.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit before, and you even talked about you didn't know you had an option.
Yes, the observer. I can't remember the actual term. Even though I just saw the movie, which I'm also forgetting, Hacksaw Ridge. I just saw it again this past weekend with my family. It was on TV, and the lead character, he was an observer. I can't remember the term, and it's bothering me. But basically opted out of using a gun, and he's out in the field, and it's a great story. And had I known, I would have been that kind of observer where I was like, I opted not to use it. I would have opted not to use a gun.
Yeah.
People have asked me similar scenarios, not necessarily with the wife thing, but if I was like downrange and I had a gun, because I almost did that. I was supposed to last year, but because of health issues, I wasn't able to deploy. But it was do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it would have actually looked like, but I was asked, like talking about war and killing and everything. I said I would so much rather like get a table and have a conversation with whoever's on the other side of that, ISIS, whatever ISIS member, like, oh, let's have a conversation, let's like talk about it, because I think we can clear things up, but they're not willing to have that conversation. And
That's
like
the hard part, right?
Exactly. And if they're willing to have the conversation, I'm like, let's drop the guns. And I don't want to kill either. Like I really, in terms of defending someone else, I would do everything I can to stop them. I would hope that I would not have to kill them, but I don't know what kind of person would like go until the end, and really commit to that.
So there was,
that'd be unfortunate, but
some foreign affairs guy was on NPR talking about North Korea sometime last week, and basically, somebody was asking him, do you think North Korea will continue to develop its nuclear weapons? He said, absolutely. They no doubt. And they were like, what do you think we can do about it? Do you think we should intervene and go to war with them? And he kind of said, I think that will only make things worse. I think they will strike on their innocent neighbors and so on and so forth. And he said, okay, so then what do you have to do? And he said, you have to negotiate with them. And he said, what do they want? And he said, they want all their restrictions. They want to be able to do what they want to do. They want to be able to sit at the table and have power and be respected as they want to be viewed and have a seat at the table like every other country. That's what they're pushing for. That's what this is all about, is for people to legitimize them and treat them as if they haven't committed any crimes and do all this stuff. And and the guy was like, so should we do that? Do you overlook the crimes? Do you just say, okay, fine, you're a full-fledged member of the United Nations, so on and so forth, no problem, we respect you, we're going to praise you publicly, and herein lies the conflict, where he's like, well, basically he's like, you shouldn't do that, but he was basically saying, I guess, sure, that would be better than the war, but then is it to overlook all these horrendous acts? And
sure.
And so it's like, that's where I agree with you that I would really like, because just thinking about when I was listening to this on the radio, I thought, what do you do? Because when you sit down to negotiate and say, let's drop the weapons, you're assuming that people are coming from the same place you are, of saying, like, look, my main goal is I just want us all to get along. But people have other goals. And and we should know that well as Christians, that we don't always have the goals we should have, right?
Right.
And so, the complexity, I can't imagine being an elected official who has to engage with this and say, like, we either, like, decidedly say no to this person and say, no, you can't do this, and then risk them doing further atrocities, or sweep things under the rug and say, look, no big deal. Come to the table. We'll treat you like a friend.
And I think there's the complexities of being a ruler.
Yeah.
which is complex.
Yeah.
But then there's the complexities of what is the role of the church.
Yeah.
And if you think about Jesus is a failed revolutionary.
Yep.
Who ultimately, his role, what he did was to be crushed by the government.
Yep.
An attempt to reform is crushed. And he has to decide even there if he understands that. Like if because he has his own doubts, and he decides, he looks down on the cross, he looks at his family, he looks at John, he looks and he says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go through this. I'm going to die, and I'm going to forgive, and I'm going to...
Right.
And so, like, when I think about these things as a church, I think, well, there's the kingdoms that God establishes and tears down, but there's a kingdom that hasn't been torn down, that exists in the U.S., exists in Korea, it exists all over the world.
And transcends all of those. Right.
And those are the people in which we are all together with.
Yeah.
There are no borders to that kingdom. And that kingdom is one that speaks the gospel to power and is crushed by power.
Right.
And that's the role of the church. And I don't think we like that, because that's actually more terrifying, because it puts us with the poor and the downtrodden and the ones who don't get things because they don't use power to get them.
Yeah. No, I see that. And I think that's the podcast. This is where Boyd and Claiborne were landing the most, was on this the idea of the church as the counterculture. And I completely, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know if I could articulate their full position, but I very much understand and agree with that. I guess then the only other nuance I would add is, like, so then you're right, the church doesn't operate like the government, where it's a very different reality, where serving is great and dying and suffering is powerful versus exercising force. But then even in Jesus doing all that, like, he never, I don't know, this is an new thought to me, but in doing all of that, like, he doesn't say that the authorities were wrong necessarily for putting criminals to death.
No,
like, he suffers under it. Right. He doesn't
speak out against the system.
So he doesn't become this, like, this religious group that's he's not like the picketer who right, he doesn't do that either.
Well, and that's where, like, and I can't remember if it was Walter Brueggemann or Howard Ross, where I kind of veer off from them in the sense that they talk about the church's role obviously is towards poverty,
right,
and to the poor, and Jesus talks about that constantly.
Right.
But then they also say that we have to organize as churches and protest,
right,
and speak against what's happening in our culture,
right.
And I agree, we need to remove the flags. We've got to get rid of the flags in our churches. I know that's hard in the Bible Belt, but we have to, like, get rid of the nationalism.
Yeah. And you still have it up, but you're working on it.
We are.
Yeah.
One star at a time. No, we've never had a flag, and people would kill me, and that's what we did. But those things we have to do. But I don't know how politically activist oriented I think.
Right.
Because when I look at Jesus, I'm like, he was religiously an activist.
Yeah.
He spoke against the pastors, basically, and the elders of the existing church. And they're not taking care of the poor and not taking care, and they're being in bed with the power.
Yeah.
So I think that part of activism we're called to. Like, I'm called to call that out in you, and vice versa.
Yeah.
In the larger church, we should be speaking against how the church operates in culture.
It sort of seems to me, and I guess this is an assumption, but I would assume it had to be very confusing to follow Jesus, because I think we've talked about here before, like, you've got this mishmash of you've got a zealot with a tax collector, and then later on you've got Roman centurions coming to the faith along with certain Pharisees, and then other Pharisees are definitely being Jesus is pulling the rug out from under him. And,
definitely.
And obviously not a lot of Roman centurions were interested, maybe a few. But following Jesus had to be this weird thing where people felt like this strange, like, draw, like this is truth. But then they're thrust into this community of very different folks who all have that same sense that this is truth, but they I mean, can you imagine walking around, like the zealot and the tax collector, there's 12 people walking around following Jesus from one town to another, and they're all just talking about life, and how, and the one thing that binds them together is Jesus. And outside of that, a few of them, we all fish together. Well, I didn't fish. I didn't, It wasn't like this community that just understood each other and then also got Jesus. It was a community that didn't understand each other at all, and the only thing they had in common was Jesus. And anyway, it seems like that should be the case in Christianity now. You should look around your church and go, how in the world am I united with these people, yet have a deep sense that you are in Jesus?
Yeah.
And if you look around and go, of course I'm united with these people because I think exactly the same as them, then there's probably not a lot of gospel going on. Like, this probably isn't a gospel-centered community. It's really a cultural-centered community.
Right. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So you can't, so flags. Like, we don't unite around the flag. We don't unite around whatever. We don't unite around a certain thing we protest.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, I think the funny thing, even in our church, I have to laugh, is that it's almost gone back to the early church, in that we've moved to all these food laws, where we have people who are. I always say we have people who love In-N-Out and promote In-N-Out. We have our vegetarians. We have our paleo people. Then we have a large group of people who can't eat watermelon and have like serious fruit and food allergies that are coming on more. So you all of a sudden now, when you sit down, the one thing that used to be we could all just sit down and eat together, we're back to the early church where we're separated by what we eat, which is a whole new interesting thing.
Except it used to be laws, and now it's allergies and laws.
Yes, and laws. There's
that's true. I feel like a lot of the things that could separate in our community are there's a lot of that too, and then just interestingly, for a time that's supposed to be morally relative, like there are so many moral stances that are being like that you have to hold, right? And I get valuing things. I mean, I've been wrestling with this with our business that. We want people to value. I have a business. We make furniture, so we want people to value furniture handmade in your community. That where the money that you pay for your furniture goes back into people in your community, and you don't outsource it out to unethical companies. We value that, right? And so, but will I be united in a church with somebody who doesn't value that?
Right.
Yeah, and that's the question. And we are now. And I hope that our moral conviction on that doesn't become the new law that we place in front of we're Christians and we buy ethically produced furniture. That's the two pathways into here. Or we're vegan.
Right.
Or we're whatever,
Well, and this is a little different, but it's sort of along the same lines in that, you think about Paul, and here he is, he's a Roman citizen, and the Romans are horrible. Right. And he doesn't get rid of his Roman citizenship. No. He uses it. He manipulates the system to get whatever he wants so that he can get the gospel to go forward.
You heard it right here. Pastor Eric Siepen, how to manipulate the system.
Oh, well, I think Paul's an instruction to us, and that it's, in some ways, the morality of the government is not our issue.
Right.
Using them to preach the gospel is part of our mission.
Yeah, and so that's where
terrifying.
And you should pull the card of look, freedom. There are certain freedoms that are guaranteed to me, but at the same time, pull the card of look, I'm not 100% beholden to you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll take your beating.
Right.
And then I'll tell you I'm a citizen.
Yeah. Yeah, and you should feel shame for what you've done. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all very complicated. But that piece, the willingness to suffer, is something that, and wrestle to even speak of that because are you willing to suffer? Am I? I haven't been faced with that. Not the way that many have. So it's one thing to say it, right? But it's one thing to get mad and fight for your freedoms. But like you're saying, Jesus and so many of the disciples, they said, look, the kingdom of God is more important to me. If I have to suffer under your law, that's fine. I will accept that because that's how I speak to the fact that this is greater, more beautiful, and more important. In fact, my life here on earth and my life as a citizen here is of very small importance compared to my eternal citizenship and my eternal hope. And I think sometimes our fighting for this place and space and system betrays the fact that we aren't so connected to our eternal hope.
I like that. It's good.
Bryan, you are in the military. What are you thinking about this?
Well, I kind of shared my position. We talked about the last week that I was bullied.
Yeah.
So just make it even more reason not to post last week's episode. But I was bullied, and I actually had a conversation with this like early this year, and a counselor had asked me like, "Oh hey, like, don't you wish you had your military training to kind of teach those guys a lesson?" And I said no. I was like, I wish that I had kind of had the wisdom to fuse that situation. Because I feel like now I would have had kind of discernment, and I'd be able to, in a sense, talk my way out of it. But it wouldn't have changed. The only thing that would have changed in terms of like my response, if I had fought back, was if someone else was being attacked and I was there, I would step in. Mm-hmm. But if I'm just taking the hits, if my life's threatened, I'd run and I sprint. But I don't respond with the same attitude in a sense. I don't fight back.
So it sounds like where you land on this is, if it's me, this isn't worth a fight.
Yeah, I take the hits or I run.
But then if there's someone who's weak, who's being attacked, then I would assume you could identify with that person and kind of wish someone had intervened for you, right?
Yeah.
That you would intervene on the behalf of somebody who was weak and couldn't fight for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I like your stance in terms of elected officials as well, because that's more like my personal choice. I don't want to keep anyone else from their personal choice either, and but I don't know if I would specifically elect someone who would make decisions differently. So there's a conflict there too, and that's more something that I would have to think about and pray about. But because I work for people very closely who would actively just like lay them out, they're gone. I don't want to see them breathe because they've done atrocities and stuff like that.
Right.
So they're not just like anybody, they're just like people who are doing injustices. So yeah, like you said, it does get complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
In a lot of ways, I am a pacifist, and I don't. And I said that before. I was like, in a lot of ways, I am pacifist, but I shouldn't really commit to that personally because I'm still figuring things out.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I relate to that. Still figuring things out.
Yeah.
Suppose. Sometimes, do you ever feel? Side note: as a pastor, Eric, that as a pastor, you're supposed to have like positions on everything. I feel like I'm supposed to have positions on everything.
On everything?
I feel like it, and I don't. I'm just, I don't have a position on this per se, and I find it deeply complex, and I would love if I had great clarity on it someday, but I'm not sure if I will.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes people's need to have you have a position so that they can be forced to think.
Right.
So that's the hard part, is that, like, if you don't have a position, then you're not going to say anything forceful. It's hard for them to, like, they need something to react to because we're such a reactionary culture.
Right.
So I think that's partly why they push pastors and people in authority to have a position.
Right.
Because they want to react to you.
Right.
It solidifies their perspective, or they're looking for someone to argue with. It's
Right.
like a reason why they're right and you're wrong.
Or to
Right.
counter an argument they heard that they're really uncomfortable with, and they're hoping that you can articulate something more clear.
Something that they can grab onto and say, I'm with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or her, or whatever. Yeah.
So I think those are, I think I have gotten to the point where I'm just either I have a position or I'm just okay not having one.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when people ask me to have a position, or they like want to know what I think, and I don't think, then it forces you to be like, okay, well, maybe I need to have a more serious process of, and think this through and be able to articulate something for them. It doesn't have to be a position, but certainly a way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes there's just too many things that have opinions about it.
It gets overwhelming.
It does get very overwhelming.
And then as your church starts to... Can you imagine having a mega church of thousands of people with all these different opinions that were all hoping for something from you? I can't keep up with, like, the idea that there are 100 people in our church that are coming from different perspectives and that 10 of them want to know what I think about something is absolutely overwhelming to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, see, I don't have to worry because we only have 80 adults, so we're good. Like, I hear it. Once you hit 100 adults, I like the whole ideas and thoughts.
That's the threshold.
Yeah, it's the threshold.
No, I don't know where we are. It's the summer in Tucson, Arizona. Nobody knows how many people go to your church. Yeah. Between 115-degree days and absolute floods.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Well, if you go, so let's just say you said 100 and 10 want to know your opinion, and you have 1,000, which is not even a mega church.
No.
So now you're going to multiply that times 10.
Yeah, got 100 people.
100 people want to know what you think.
Or want you to take a position on something.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm retiring really fast from that job.
Yeah. Man, that's rough.
I don't know. I think our podcast went pretty well.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in. Everybody here in Tucson, Arizona, Tokyo, down to the Netherlands.
Yep. This is Faith Over Breakfast with Pastor Angel Littleton and Pastor Eric Siepen. I know. Thank you for watching. There you go.
Oh,
yeah. And listening for those who are just listening.